So with that being said, this is your last chance to purchase the full Power Plan book. There'll be a few copies, I understand, that will be here. But if you're looking to get a copy, you can certainly see Shirley, and she'll help you out with that. So just before I give this over to Ern to speak on the topic, I'll just say that after this session, just don't forget that there is going to be a bit of a break between this session and the 6:30 session. We're going to have a bit of a light meal of soup and buns, so please join us for that. And our topic this afternoon is water up for high efficiency and energy. And then the 6:30 will be your body's amazing overnight repair shop. So they both sound like the messages I need to hear. I don't know about you. Anyway, I'll just have a word of prayer, and then I'll invite Ern to come up. Gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for all that we've learned. We thank you that we can have the opportunity to take all this information in, and now we just have to figure out what we're going to do with it. And I ask for your guidance with that. Help us to not be overwhelmed with all the information, but to be able to put it to good use and maybe pick a few things, one or two things that we can do right now that can make a difference in our lives. Thank you again for sending Ern here to us, and bless the messages that he has prepared for us this afternoon and evening. In your name I pray, amen.
Well, how are you doing today? Did you catch the idea that over the last week or so that there is hope? There is hope. We can feel better. There's something out there that's free, and we can actually feel better than we have in the past. And so I'm going to start with this title, Water Up for High Efficiency. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, really. High efficiency is just one of many, many, many things about what we need to do. How are you doing with drinking water? Do you all drink water? Yeah? I was talking to one man. He gets a lot of water. And he must have been, 65 or 70. He's very proud to tell me he drank no water ever. And he's so proud of that. And he thought, well, that made him tough or something. I don't know. I felt so bad. Well, it wasn't a few years later, he just died. And I didn't find that out. It would have been a good story to say. He died because he didn't have water. But I'm just so surprised that people... Yes, hi. You have a question? Your father never drank water. And did he live okay? Still alive? Okay. So it is possible. It is possible. But you know what? You are so better off if you do drink water. So did you do any action step in the last, say, 24 hours? Anything else? Do you do a chart like a habit tracker maybe? Did you go for a walk? Did you eat an apple? Something like that? Yeah, are you aware that we have the ability to make ourselves feel better by what we do, right? So we change how we feel by changing what we do. And so this is what lifestyle medicine is all about. And so tell me anything at all you've learned, especially last night, which was Saturday night. Anything you learned Saturday night? What did we talk about Saturday night? Spirituality. Was that what we talked about last night? Which Sunday? Yeah, we talked about that I think it was on Friday night. But you can still talk about that too, because anything at all so far is game. Did you have your hand up? Did you have your hand up? You were going to say something, though. Pour at drinking water. We will inspire you. We will inspire you. Anything else? Oh, was that what it was? Exercising outdoors? You know what? Water is actually good for your memory. I think I need to drink some more water. So I remember what I talked about last night. Anybody else? Anything at all for the last, say, several nights? Mm-hmm. Yes? It is amazing, isn't it? Yeah. You know, pardon, go ahead. I was going to say, the best situation for us is actually to live outdoors all of our lives on a mountainside, so we have to walk up and down, next to a stream where water's going over 6 miles an hour over rocks to get rid of bacteria, with a garden and with our friends and with a sense of mission. You put all that together, then we're next door to Superman, just if we can do that. Now, I know it's not always practical, of course, but that would be an ideal. Yes? Oh, is that right? All year here in Williams Lake. Why? So it's possible. It'd be interesting to study her and see if how many colds she gets per year, and things like that. Yeah, that's so interesting. I didn't know that. Yes. Good. Right on. Okay. See, there you go. That's a full power action plan right there. Proud of you. Yeah, excellent. There you go. See? Kudos to Christina as well. Anyone go for a walk at all? Anyone else? Yeah, some of you? I went for a walk today, an hour or so. I walked down the hill. Then I walked up the hill. And I thought, I'm going to take a break right now and take a picture of something, because that way my heart can go down. I could feel my heart beating. I could feel it beating probably about 120, 130 beats a minute or something like that. I could just feel it. But it's nice. You go up there, you walk up that hill as fast as you can. You're breathing. That's okay. Sorry, just don't get a heart attack. And you just stop and you rest and you keep on going. That's the way it is. So if habits made me who I was, then new habits will remake me into who I choose to become. And that's what we're talking about here. If you want to get a summary of all this, in 23 minutes or so, then just go to It Is Written Canada and put in full power there. And you see Mike Lemon and his wife, Renee Lemon, and they're interviewing me on full power. And so you can do that if you want on YouTube. It Is Written Canada. So let's open up our treasure chest and pull out one more golden nugget. Water up for efficiency. What the doctor ordered is water. And so we'll be looking at, page 27, for those of you who have the workbooks, and then the note page, I think, is right before it, page 26. And this is kind of what we're looking at for today. Now, can any of you recall the average playing career length of a football player in the NHL? 7 years? Yeah. Not very long, 7 years. I will put up the answer there, but that's a good guess. Can anyone recall the most celebrated football player ever? I'm going to mention him too. Well, look at this. This is the different parts of the different positions on the team. You could be a kicker or a punter or a quarterback or an offensive lineman, et cetera, et cetera. And those blue bars represent the length of career that a football player has according to whatever position they have. And if you look, the one who is the longest is the kicker, and the kicker is just under 5-year career. So Ron was being very generous. That's the longest, not longest, but on average. If you happen to be a quarterback, that's 4.5 years on average across the entire NFL. And so that's relatively short. So I would say that, what are you doing for the rest of your life? Because you're riding high and getting all that money for playing, and well, that only lasts for 4 years or something like that. And so the average is actually 3 in the third year. Now, I'm going to compare all that to one particular football player who happens to consume a couple of 100 ounces of water every day. And that football player happens to had a career that's this long in comparison to all the rest. And you ask him, how is it that you could last out 4 or 5 times longer than the average football player? And he happened to go up until he was 42 years old. Do you recognize this guy now, looking at him? Maybe I need to put his name up there for you. That's Tom Brady. A movie came out called 80 for Brady. And so he's just a famous guy. And he's actually the most accomplished player in NFL history. And he advocates daily water intake in ounces of half your body weight in pounds. So if you happen to weigh 150 pounds, half of that is 75, so drink 75 ounces. If you weigh 200 pounds, half of that is 100, so drink 100 ounces. That's what he says. Now, is he an expert? Well, no, but he's the one doing it, and he's the one breaking all those records in football. Running almost every record there was, he's broken it quite a lot. He also has a book on what he eats and stuff like that, and he's got the money to pay for massages every day after a workout and everything else. But he's basically saying, one reason why I was able to stay in football for like 20 years, when average is only 5, 4, 3 years, is because of what he eats and that he drinks water, so much water. That's what the whole point is. That water going through his system all the time, just cleansing out toxins and everything else, that's what he's saying. And so now we're going to add to that. If I recognize he's an athlete, right? He's retired now, but he was an athlete. And so he's going to need a whole lot more water than the average person because he's so very, very active. But it's interesting that he credits water as also a whole foods plant-based diet, mostly, with his ability to have all that energy on the field and all that speed, even at the age of 42, when all the other football players are like 27 and 25 and all that kind of stuff, and maybe even their 30s if they get old. So he credits water for this. And now we'll add to it from research from Johns Hopkins University. The more hydrated you are, the more efficiently your body works at tasks that range from thinking, just thinking, to burning fat. So our body needs to work efficiently, and when it works efficiently, a million things happen a whole lot faster and more efficiently than when we don't, versus when we don't have water. So it's so, so important. And even burning fat. We'll talk a little bit about losing weight and burning fat. Well, what do you think this is? There you go. And that cell, and how many do we have? Anybody count yet? 7 cells? 70? You know, it could be 70 trillion. I've read anywhere between 10 trillion to 80 trillion. I guess it depends on how big you are and all that kind of stuff. Well, those cells are what make us live or die. And if we want to live on full power, then it's those cells that we have to provide the energy to, whether it be water or oxygen or the fuel that we eat. It's all in the cell. And so this is when Tom Brady talks about all the water he's drinking. He's very aware that when he's running down the field or throwing that football or getting tackled and all that energy and all that breathing that he has to do and just to keep his body going, he's aware that he's got like 50 trillion cells in his body that need all that support, and that's what he's doing. So there's different kind of cells. You got the pancreas cell, muscle cell, heart cell, brain cell, bone cell. They're all there, and water needs to go to every single one of them. That's what we live for, or that's why we live. No other molecule comes even close to the unique life-supporting healing properties of water. Our cells live or die depending on the efficiency of a delivery system that requires adequate H2O. And so here's a picture of those red blood cells. They're red because they've got oxygen in them, and they're flowing into the heart, and it's going to go around the body. And so can someone tell me why are some of those blood vessels blue and why some of them are red? Anyone? Yeah, oxygen, right? So you know that when they leave the heart and they leave the lungs, they have oxygen, and then they go back to the heart, up to the heart again. And when they do that, it's like blue. They're veins and not blood vessels. Now, consider that a blood vessel is like a hose. A hose is a very, a very rudimentary analogy here, but it is something that's long and tubule, like a blood vessel, and it does have something going through it, which is water in this case. Now, when we don't get enough water, it's kind of like putting honey through that hose. Now, can you imagine what it's like to pump honey through a hose? Just imagine that. And you want to water your garden with honey. Not that you'd ever want to, but consider, we know that honey is going to be sluggish. It's sticky. And you have to work hard to get something sticky through a tube. And that's what it's like with our blood vessels when we don't drink water. It gets sluggish. It really gets sluggish. As a matter of fact, maybe I can illustrate it this way. It's our blood, which is where the water spends a lot of its time. Our blood is a delivery system and a pickup system. And inadequate water in the circulation system, like all the highways and byways of British Columbia, is like making every delivery truck slog through the mud. And so a blood vessel, got a hemoglobin, it's got oxygen in there, and is going through our blood cell. A blood cell with hemoglobin and oxygen and all that stuff is going through. It's like a delivery system. It delivers energy. It delivers fuel to those 50 trillion cells. It's a delivery system. And so if you can think of a corporation of trucks just delivering things all over Canada, now imagine that we forced every single truck to drive through the mud all the time. And so just like what this is here. And it's not just a case of one truck or a delivery truck driving through. It's every single one of them. And that's what it's like inside of our bodies when we don't drink water. We're forcing things to happen in our bodies which our bodies need water for. And we're forcing our bodies to work harder. Well, guess what happens when your body has to work harder to get the blood going? Up goes your blood pressure. And that, of course, affects our cardiovascular health. And there's so much more to it, but that's the simplified version. So it also helps our digestion. Water helps digestion and absorption of nutrients. So not just oxygen, it's also the nutrients as well, the proteins, the carbohydrates, and the fats and whatnot, and minerals, everything else that we eat. It is needed to make saliva, and which helps to break down food in the mouth where digestion starts. So digestion is just another word for breaking down a molecule into smaller pieces. That's what digestion is. You take off a piece, take off a piece, take off a piece, smaller, smaller, smaller. Now it turns into liquid, and now it can go into our cells. That's what digestion is. And that turns, of course, converts into energy so we can move and breathe and have our being type of thing. Well, water really helps that to happen. Now, regarding digestion, I saw this. I need to put it up on the screen for you, even though it's a little harder to read. It says a glass of water reaches the intestines in 3 minutes. In 3 minutes. Take a glass of water, intestine, 3 minutes later. The digestion of solid foods requires a great deal of water. The mucus of the stomach, where the food goes, and the intestines is 98% water. The mucus, which we need to have working our system inside. A glass of water drunk half an hour before mealtime will help the stomach absorb solid and acidic foods. So here's another reason to drink water. So you can do an experiment if you want. If you're a person not used to drinking much water, for a week, let's just say, a half hour before you eat, drink a glass of water. And do that every time you eat a half hour before. And just see if you feel a difference in your life, less stomach aches and just more energy. Just do even one glass of water. Just see if you feel a difference there. This is what helps. It really helps. Now, here's a bit of a close-up of a capillary. What's a capillary? Yeah, little tiny blood vessel, little tiny, microscopic. You can't even see it. It's so microscopic. Like maybe, here's a meter, here's a centimeter, here's a millimeter, and a capillary is a micrometer. Like you can't even see it. It's so small that you can only fit one blood cell down the tube at a time. And it has to be followed up by other blood cells, like a whole row of marbles going. You can't flow easy. It's just one. That's how small a capillary is. And it's the capillaries that we need that goes to all the trillions of cells. And the capillaries, of course, come from the bigger blood vessels. Now, here's an example. So we have a red blood cell carrying oxygen. You see that up in the top left. And it's going along, and it's going along, and then it drops the oxygen off. It delivers. It's a delivery system to a body cell. And then it drops off the nutrients because it's a delivery system. And when it drops off the oxygen, of course, there's no oxygen. It's going to turn bluish anyway, and then go on back to the heart. And that's its job. And I just way oversimplified it, but you got the idea, I think. Now, let's take a look. A typical capillary is about 5 to 10 micrometers wide. A red blood cell is about 7 to 8 micrometers across. You get the idea of how the mechanics works inside? The red blood cell, it says in many places the capillary, that little tiny red blood cell, a tube, a blood vessel, a little tiny one, is the same size or even slightly smaller than the cell. So imagine having your garden hose, and you want to put a marble in there, and the marble's too big. It's really tight. So what has to happen is what does RBC stand for? Yeah, red blood cell. So a red blood cell enters a little tiny capillary, and it has to get through. It has to fold. It has to bend. It has to stretch. It has to change its shape just to kind of squeeze through that little tiny tube to make its delivery to your cell so the mitochondria can get there and convert that into ATP, which is adenosine triphosphate, which energizes the body. So you really got to get it through the capillaries. And it moves single file like marbles rolling through a narrow glass or a narrow tube. Well, water normalizes the blood pressure so that can all work. So if without water, you're going to get those cells sticking together, and they're not going to get through. Now, when that happens in our fingertips, we get cold hands. We get cold fingers. I remember a long time ago, I took up jogging. I've been jogging off and on over the years, but I went for a long time. I didn't walk much. I didn't jog much. And then I started to do this. I went with my wife, and I noticed tingling in my hands. I asked the doctor, what's going on? He says, your nervous system and your capillaries are coming to life. Really? You mean they've been dead all this time? Well, not dead, but they weren't very active. And so, and it changed how, obviously I was getting warmed up because I was exercising more. It really, really makes a difference. So who would have thought that cold hands relates to not drinking water? Of course, there are many more confounds. It's not just this equals that. There's much more to it than that, but water is a component of that. So water relieves constipation for that poor little guy. It also, believe it or not, makes you smarter, or at least remember things more. More than half of American children are dehydrated, when they go to school or sitting in the classroom. And that has repercussions on the health and academic performance. Just drinking water at school. Just drinking water. So if you happen to be going to school, you want to get better grades, do two things. Number one, do what I'm talking about in this lecture right now. And number two, do what I'm going to talk about after our break. And those two things will get your marks to go up. Oh, and number three, do what I already talked about when we talked about eating high-octane fuel. In other words, and omitting what is harmful, sugar. So, drink water, reduce sugar way down, and I'll be talking about sleep later on. And that almost guaranteed to get your grades up and to get you thinking better on the job. Almost guaranteed. I don't want to guarantee it, but the chances are very good. Up goes your grades because of that. Mental sharpness. No more brain fog in a research experiment on 75 children. Here's the quote. Kids assigned to drink 2.5 liters of water a day. How much is 2.5 liters? Okay, 1 liter is about 4 cups or so. 4 cups is a little bit more than a liter. 2 liters, about 8 cups of water. 2.5 liters, 10 cups of water. That's a lot of water for the average person. But children who did that in a day had significantly better scores on the cognitive flexibility test than those who were assigned to drink only 1/2 liter, just 2 cups. Water makes that much of a difference. And that was put out by discovery.com/science/drinking water may boost kids' mental sharpness. You can find that there. It's quite amazing, isn't it? It's almost as if I were a student, I would hope that no other student heard about this and only me. And then I'd have a secret. I have a secret to getting ahead. And that's what full power is. It gives you these secrets so you can get ahead. And not that I want to deprive anybody of the secrets at all, but sometimes people feel that way, like I know stuff that you don't. Or I do stuff that you don't, like drink more water in this case. Even mild dehydration, not getting enough water. Just even 1 to 2% of body weight loss. So if you weigh 200 pounds, what's 1%? It's 2 pounds. Is that right? All right, so now, of body weight loss, of dehydration, so water makes us way heavier, but then water just goes out of us. So it doesn't matter if we weigh up or down. This is water. Water goes through us all the time. As a matter of fact, when people go on these big diets, or they go to a health retreat or something, and they lose all this weight so fast, they lost like 5 pounds in just 3 days, it's mostly water. It's not usually fat that they're losing. It's mostly water, often to do with the salt that they're not eating like they used to eat before. So water makes a big difference. So now, if we're dehydrated, it reduces alertness in short-term memory, your memory. Also impairs mood. We'll talk about that in a moment. And increases anxiety. So not drinking water might be one reason why we worry more. Who would have thought that? Why? Because water goes to our brains. Cells are in our brains just as well as all the rest of our body. And our brains is what makes us think and feel. So you can imagine then if we can strengthen the part of our bodies that contribute to our thinking and our feeling, that we now have a very substantive material cause of like an immaterial effect of emotions. And there is that effect. It decreases reaction time and problem solving. In older adults, these effects are even more pronounced because the thirst response weakens with age. So as the older we get, the less we know we're thirsty. So we have to be more conscious of drinking our water because we won't feel thirst like we did when we were 28 years old. So water does improve short-term memory. So that might be one reason why I forgot where I put the keys or something. It relieves fatigue. Well-hydrated blood speeds the removal of carbon dioxide and metabolic waste, reducing fatigue and inflammation. So we drink water, this is why we talk about it makes us more efficient and makes us more energy. Just drinking more water because it makes things move faster in our body. It just smooths the way, as it were. It even gives us healthy skin. Water is foundation beauty treatment for a clearer complexion. Water brings moisture and nutrients to your organs. And the biggest organ is what? It's your skin. And water can go there and do its job. Many scientists say that water helps flush toxins from the skin, which can reduce acne and blemishes. Water does this. I was talking to one fellow a few years ago who teaches a lot on health, and he's just a fit, good-looking specimen of humanity. You just want to be just like him. And he was telling a story that somebody, a lady, came up to him and said, "Boy, you're one good-looking guy. What's your secret? What's your complexion? Why is your complexion so good and stuff?" And he said, "Water." He said, "Water." And the lady said, "Listen, I will pay you a lot of money if you tell me your secret." And he said, "It's water." No. Really, I promise I won't tell anybody else. What's your secret? It's water. And he had to convince her, there's no secret except water. That's what did it. And that's what he said there. That's what he told me. Anyway, some research indicates water improves skin elasticity, making it bounce back from sagging. Have you ever done that test before? It's pretty easy to do. Just take the back of your hand, squeeze some skin, pull it up, and see if it goes, or does it go really slow. All right, so if it springs back to your hand again, then you're really doing pretty good with your water. And if it takes us a while, then you probably need a little bit more water. So check it out there. So this is a very simple test that you can do there. And there's a lot, again, there's more confounds to this, so it's more, it's not the simple thing. We'll go on there. Water also speeds up the healing of sunburned skin as well, all from the inside. Did you know that water helps with weight loss? I thought you put on weight when you drank water. Well, yeah, but having water in your body is not your real weight. I mean, when we want to lose weight, it's not so much the weight that we want to lose, it's the extra fat that we want to lose, right? And so water actually helps. Let me read about it. Drinking water between meals can help you lose weight. A study by researchers from the University of Illinois, they reported in a journal, the Human Nutrition and Dietetics, that's the journal, that participants who drank the most plain or clean water in their daily diet consumed fewer total calories. So they drank the most water, and that caused them to not eat as many calories. They also drank fewer sweetened beverages, which is just horrible for our system, and took in less total fat, and less saturated fat, and less sugar, and less salt, and less cholesterol, all because of water. So not only does water do good for us, but water can take the place of the bad stuff that we would have otherwise put into our bodies as well. Isn't that cool? There's a lot you can get done by just drinking more water. Sabrina, is that water? No, it's not water. It's tea. It's tea. She had to tell us it's tea. Any water in there, though? Yeah, okay, good. I wanted to give a compliment to Sabrina because as soon as I'm talking about water, she's drinking. So that's good. Drinking water between meals can help. Oh, I already read that one. Yeah, read that one. So it also helps with productivity. Well, why wouldn't it? If it's causing our brain and the blood vessels to act more efficiently, why wouldn't we therefore be more productive in the day? We get more things done in the day because our minds are clear, our bodies are more ready to go, stuff like that. So it would make us more productive. Not every headache, but some headaches can be caused by dehydration. And so if you have a headache, what's causing my headache? And you can eliminate this, you can eliminate that, and just see what's left over to cause your headache. It may be dehydration. It may be, so drink some more water over the day and just see if your headache is affected by that. Now, do you see this? What does this mean? This picture. Yeah, this is actually, I meant to use it for an exaggerated picture to show dehydration. When we are dehydrated, our brain even shrinks. And so half of that is shrunk. Now, really, that's exaggerating, I'm pretty sure. But it kind of shows the idea that our brains are very, very sensitive organs, and they respond well to water. Water. A lot of stuff goes on in our brains. So we need to do the best we can. Now, the average person will have about, as I said there, 70% water or so, give or take. The more fat we have on us, the less water is in our system or in our cells. But the average is about around 70%. So where are you in your water drinking? So I'll put that back on here. Are you drinking 2 glasses a day, as in 2 cups a day? 4, 6, 8, 10? Where are you on that? So just kind of do a little self-check. I'm going to go through some of this and then I'm going to repeat some of it with pictures. Water affects our mood. It affects the toxin level in our bodies. It affects some arthritis, not all. Digestion. It leaves tiredness or fatigue. Constipation. Healthy skin. Weight loss. Productivity and headaches. So this is kind of a very quick summary of all the things that I said. But here's the lady. She's so happy. She's in a good mood. She drank her water that day. And here's the gentleman whose adequate water increases the rate of which impurities leave the body, and waste, and toxins. It increases the rate that happens. It doesn't happen with all arthritis, and it's not a cure for arthritis, but it helps support our bone health and joint pain and whatnot. I happen to, my father's wife, not my mother, but my father's wife, lovely lady, she was telling us one day, this is about 20 years ago, I was visiting in Halifax, not too far actually from Peggy's Cove, if you know the area. And she just loves working in the kitchen. I mean, she kicks my father out of the kitchen. So get out of here. This is my domain. And then when I come over or family comes over, she's just busy in the kitchen doing everything. And well, this one day, she actually asked for help, which is very unusual. She never asks for help. She does it all. She's the boss. And to carry a pot, like a pot of potatoes or some kind of food, over from, say, the counter to the table. And we're figuring out what's going on. And in fact, she said she had arthritis. And she couldn't fold her hand into a fist. And it was painful. And at that time, she worked at a place where they kind of created or made or manufactured harnesses for airplane seats. And it required a lot of working with tools. And she's thinking, I need to quit my job. I can't do this anymore. So I said, have you ever, how's your water drinking? I said to her. She said, well, I don't drink water. And I said, well, I just read a few studies that were done recently. I'm going to try an experiment just to see what works. And I said, when you get up in the morning, just drink a tall glass of water and see if that helps with your bone pain, your arthritis. Now, I want to distinguish between arthritis and joint pain. They're not always the same. She had joint pain, which she called arthritis, but I don't think it was diagnosed by a doctor. But so let's just leave it at that there. So I guess she went and did that, and then I'm visiting about 7 years later. I visit every now and then, but 7 years later or so, I'm back again with my aunts and my uncles and cousins and my brothers and sisters, a big, big celebration around in the summer, actually. And we're there about, 14, 15 of us around a big table. And here she is in the kitchen again, and she's cooking up the meals, and she's just enjoying this. She just loves it. And she's going around, and she is now carrying the pots herself. And then we are sitting down, and all of us were talking, and then somebody talks about, energy or health or arthritis, or the topic came up. And then she said, look at my hand. And then she does this. I mean, she's so proud she can do this. And she said, and everybody was, oh, wow, look at that. That's pretty good. You couldn't do that before, but now you can. And then she said, why? She says, about 7 years ago, Ernie, they call me Ernie over there, came over and he said I should drink a glass of water every morning. So not only did I do that, I drank 2 glasses in the morning and then more during the day, and now I got my hands back again. And she was so happy to be able to do this. I thought that was pretty cool. Really. I mean, all it took was for me just to say like 2 sentences, and it changed her life. She kept her job. That's worth thousands of dollars just right there alone, just by drinking more water. Isn't that something? Doesn't that motivate you? So I said I'd try and inspire you, right? I want to inspire you. So be inspired. Her name is Gladys. Lovely lady. As a matter of fact, I just got a text from my mother who knows Gladys. They're friends. And it's just amazing. My mother and father have been divorced for, 40 years. And yet they're still friends, and they're friends with their friends. And so my mother and Gladys know each other. And she sent me a picture of Gladys on the front cover of the newspaper, having just built a snowman at the age of 89 or something like that. This is Gladys. She's just like that. So about 1 in 4 U.S. adults, that's about, 58 million people, have doctor-diagnosed arthritis. Arthritis is more common in women, 23%, likely due to genetics, hormones, relative joint laxity, compared with men, about 18%. More common among adults with fair or poor health. Interesting that arthritis is associated with generally health. So you notice some associations with other health principles. And sometimes we can't narrow down which is which. Compared with those who have excellent and very 40% versus 15%. Interesting. So if we take care of this is the whole point of full power. If we take care of our general health with these principles, it just automatically takes care of all these other things that we don't even think about. In this case, even joint pain. Cancer risk. Water reduces the risk of some cancers. Just having our body working better, of course, you're going to be able to fight whatever you have to fight, whatever disease it may be, just to have your body working more strongly, fighting that. For example, a Harvard study of 48,000 men concluded a high fluid intake is associated with decreased risk of bladder cancer in men. High fluid intake, bladder cancer. Who'd have thunk that, right? That is amazing. And that was over 48,000 men figured that out. And the question always comes up, how much water should we drink? And what's the answer? You've always heard 8 glasses a day, right? I mean, we heard that for years and years and years. You know why they say that? It's not because it's scientifically proven. It's just because it's the simplest thing to say. It's an average. Well, let me see. How many here are average? Raise your hands. Are you average? Are you average weight? Average intelligence? Average personality? Very, very few people are average. Well, the 8 glasses of water is kind of like more for an average. So if you're not average, then maybe it's not 8 that you need. Maybe it's more or maybe it's less. So here's, I don't know if you can see that. It's probably small print for you to see. But I'll blow it up a little bit here. And then noted this right here. At 160 pounds, we could call that average, I don't know. It's probably not. But 160 pounds for a 100-pound man or woman, they're the ones who, on a normal cool day, without exercising or not a hot day, need about 8 cups of water. They're the ones. So if you weigh more, you need more. Why? You have more cells to feed. You have more cells to nourish. So that's how that goes. Now let's add some more nuance to this. So the approximate daily water losses for an adult in a temperate climate. Because we know if we're in sports, we're going to need more water. If it's a hot day, we're going to need more water. So it really goes up and down, right? So through perspiration, 2.1 cups, we lose. Water loss from lungs by exhaling, because when we exhale, it's not just, carbon dioxide, it's also water vapor, right? H2O comes out as well. That's 1.7 cups during the day. Water loss with feces, half a cup. Water lost in waste removal is urine, 6 cups, 6.3 cups. Altogether, 10.6 cups. This is an average, obviously, right? So not everybody's going to have that exactly one. But the idea is that just through living, the water goes through us and out of us, and we lose water. So we have to replace that water. So how do we do that? Well, we can compensate for these losses in 3 ways. Water produced by oxidation of carbohydrates and fats. Water contained in the food we eat. And drinking water to balance the water loss. Total gain, 6 cups. So you add that together to do. So at the very least, for an adult, at the very, very least, 5 cups of water, very least, 5 cups. But you heard Tom Brady. I mean, he's drinking down quarts and quarts of water. Of course, he was an athlete, of course, but still. Now, if you want to figure this out for yourself, you can go to a website and put in Giga Calculator, gigacalculator.com. And up there, on that website, there'll be all kinds of things that you can put in to calculate things about your body. And calculate this, not even just your body, other things as well. But there's one of those things there, a calculator that calculates how much water you need. Put in your weight and put in this and put in all that. And you can do that there. So I won't do it here, but just to know that gigacalculator.com might be able to give you a very entertaining half hour of just doing that for yourself. Gigacalculator.com, and I put in water intake calculator is just one of the many calculators that you can do at that particular, when you're online. So at the very least, drink those drinking 5 or more glasses of water a day had about half the risk of dying from heart disease. Now we're getting to heart disease, compared to those who drank only 2 glasses a day. So, wow, that's really quite something, amazing. Now Cameron Johnston, anyone here know Cameron Johnston? He lives here. And I've known Cameron for about 40 years or so. I met him in 1985, so what's that? 41 years. In Newfoundland I met him. And now, so he was a pastor at one time, and I was a pastor at one time, and he actually was a mentor to me in many ways. He had trained me with Pathfinders, for example, and he'd get me going, and then he'd leave me to it all by myself, and I have to learn based upon what he told me. And I did. It was great. He'd help me with, say, a stop smoking class. He'd come in, do the first few days with me, then he'd leave, and I'd be on my own. So he got me going a lot. Well, Cameron, when he retired from pastoring, he started doing seminars on stress. And he introduced, have you heard his story on stress and all that stuff? He's burned out and all that. And he talks about being burned out. He's working so hard. Marystown, Newfoundland is where he lived at the time, and he burned out. His body was shaking. He was just laden down with all the work that he had to do while he's building a church building and a school building at the same time. He had people coming in, hundreds of people and all that stuff, and I was one of them, actually. So after doing all that, he discovers that his body's starting to shake a little bit, and he said, I better go to the doctor. And the doctor says, listen, you need to get time off work because you're stressed out. You need to have time off work. And so eventually he did take time off work, and he took his family down the eastern seaboard of the United States. Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, and the state of Maine. And then what's just below Maine? Is that New Hampshire or Vermont or on down, and then Massachusetts, and then New York is in there somewhere, and then Virginia. He's going down the coast looking for campsites. And he said, as depressed as you can be. He said, I never had a positive thought for 3 months, is what he said. And, and he was burned out, stressed, and everything else. And they happened to need, and I'm telling the story because he tells the story, and he says, that's okay that I can talk about him. So you can tell him, oh, I heard your story there, Cameron, when you see him next time. And he and his family were going from campsite to campsite. And when you're out on vacation like that, you're not really going to hotels where there are showers. You get pretty dirty and grimy, and you need a shower. And so they went a few days, and they started getting smelly, because they didn't have a shower. So they needed a shower. And so they went to a campsite that was advertising they have a shower, or it's like a trailer park, or, you put in your RV and you hook it up, and then you go to the public washroom and where all the showers are. And so it was great. They went and get a shower. Well, as he was going in, there's a lot of guys running out screaming, "Ah, it's freezing!" And he finds out that the hot water isn't working. There had been a hurricane or a storm coming into Florida. This was in Florida, and it knocked out the hot water. And so he needed a shower, though. So he got in that shower, and it was freezing cold. And he said the way he said it to me, and I danced around in that shower. I just danced around in that shower and washed up and left. And then he noticed, I actually don't feel as depressed as I felt before. It kind of gave him a little bit of alertness. And then he said, I don't know how many times, but he got into that shower, that cold, freezing cold shower, at least 6 more times that day. I thought he might have said 9 or 6, I forget which one. And the next day, the same thing, the next day, the same thing. And he realized there's something about cold water that affects how you feel. So we were talking about water on the inside of our bodies, but this is water on the outside of our bodies. Cold water. And he says, that lifted me up from depression. It started. It wasn't overnight, but it started there. Now, what was happening to Cameron? What was going inside of his body when he had those freezing cold showers? Anyone venture to guess? What? Yes. Circulation is getting, the circulation going in and out, the surface back in. Anyone else? That's only half of it, but that's an important part. Also, there's something called the vagus nerve. It comes down the neck and it kind of spreads out, so like tree roots or something like that. And it affects the vagus nerve as well. And the vagus nerve communicates the brain down to the stomach and the hormones and everything. It just is amazing what it does. I think you know a whole lot more about it. You mentioned it to me the other day. The vagus nerve is like a miracle nervous system of its own almost. Well, when you take cold showers, it energizes that vagus nerve and helps messages go back and forth from the brain to the stomach and everything else. It just does a lot. So it's circulation, and it's the vagus nerve, and probably a few more things. And so now, and he told me this like years and years ago, I've always ended my showers with cold, always, for at least 20 years or so. Maybe once I didn't, but always was cold, even today. Because there's something that's innervating when you kind of end in cold shower. And it's water. I'm just using water on the inside and on the outside. So what do you think of that? Give it a go and just see what happens. Maybe if you do it in the morning, you may not need caffeine to wake you up. I don't know. Give it a go and just see. I don't. So cold water on my body eliminates me having to wake up in some other ways. Well, almost all the time, except for when you're eating, because you don't want to dilute the hydrochloric acid that does the digestion of the food. But when you wake up in the morning, when you think you're hungry, when you perspire, before, during, and after exercise, when you're sick, when you're on the plane, when you get a message, before your period, in a slump, hydration directly affects mood, memory, and visual perception. Visual perception. And why wouldn't it? Because if water gets to those capillaries in our eyeballs, it helps us to see better. And when water gets into the molecules and the cells of our brain, helps us to think better. And so all that, and if it gets to our joints, we can move better. So water is just a lubricant. When you have a headache, half hour before eating a meal, when you want to lose weight, and when you want to be on your game. So how are you doing with your water? So I'm going to end it right there, but how are we doing for time? It's 5:30, so we're pretty well on time. Actually, I thought I was going very fast, and I thought I got over early, but I don't know what it is. Time just goes by when I'm talking, and I think I'm just talking for 10 minutes, and turns out to be an hour. So sorry about that. But may I remind you, if you happen to have a book, The Full Power Plan, if you could, go to Amazon.com or .ca and put in a one-sentence review on the book if you like something in the book. And that would tell the Amazon algorithm that someone likes this book and maybe someone else might appreciate it as well. And so if you're not sure what you can do to be like a good witness for somebody else, this is something you can do. And that message could go out to hundreds or thousands of people. And you can say, here, I read this book, and you don't even have to have read the whole book, just the first few chapters, and say, here's what I got out of the book, and just 10 words, something like that. If you could do that. So you go there on Amazon, and then right about there it says ratings. You see where it says ratings? 6 ratings in that case. It was about a year ago. I think there's only about 7 or 8 ratings now. Well, the book needs to have about 20 reviews for it to work. The algorithm. So if you can do that, and then you go here, review this product. Just put that in there, and that would help get the message out even further if you want to do that. So don't have to, but it'd be cool if you did. And so we're going to end it right there. Oh yeah, we'll talk about the Irish Rovers later on. I'm hesitant actually to sing that song here in the sanctuary. So when we go to eat, we're gonna sing the song, our theme song, in the where's the room again? Is it down here? Down here. Yeah. When we go, we're going to sing the Full Power theme song in the fellowship hall, and so we'll just close in a short prayer. Should I also say grace for the food as well? Thanks for the food. Yeah, why not? Okay, let's do that. They need 10 more minutes. Oh, thank you for asking. In that case, that actually gives us 10 minutes to learn the song. So we'll get that going there. So thank you. So we'll still go, but we'll take 10 minutes before we actually eat. So let's pray. Our Father in heaven, Lord, we thank you again for good food to eat and for the fact that we live in such a country that we do where we can find food every day. And help us to eat good food, enjoy the company. And we thank you, dear Lord, for these principles that actually come from you through Mother Nature. And Lord, I thank you for them because they're kind of like secrets that we can learn about and to help us feel better. So Lord, go with us, and we thank you for the food that we're about to eat and the fellowship that we're about to have in the name of Jesus. Amen. So we'll set up in there. Yes? They need 10 minutes. Can we go in there anyway and not eat? And then I can talk in there more. And then we'll sing the song in there. So let them know that we're coming in, but we're not going to eat for 10 minutes. We're going to sing for our food. That's what we're going to do. Yeah, okay. So yeah, also we'll go in there. So put no pressure on them because they're not ready yet. But we'll get set up, and I'll put the words up on the screen in there. And then we'll make sure that you can go away with a happy song in your heart about full power, okay? So we'll see you in there.
Well, I think we're ready to get started again. And so our next, as I mentioned earlier, our next session is on your body's amazing overnight repair shop. And if you haven't, I don't know if any of these got handed out, but there are feedback and connection forms, and we'd appreciate getting some feedback from you. So if you haven't had a chance to, actually, I might just go grab them and hand them out. But do fill out, and oh, Sandra, thank you. And so if you get a chance to just fill that out and give some feedback, we'd appreciate it. And without further ado, I'll invite Ern to come up.
So, the problems with potlucks is that there's so much good food, you end up eating a little bit more than you wanted to eat. So anyway, thank you for anyone who's made something that I just ate. It was very good. Thank you very much. So this is our last one. I'm going to miss you guys. It's been fun. It's been fun to interchange and stuff, and appreciate your stories that you've shared with me. It's really, really good. So go ahead and put the slides up there for me, and I'll start talking. I was asking how many here have heard of the Irish Rovers. I'd like to get a scientific survey of that. So how many of you heard of the Irish Rovers? Okay, half of you have. You've heard of them. So now if you were in the fellowship hall, you helped us sing that song. And so, not this one that has whiskey in it. We don't do that. But this one. No, not that one. We don't do that either. But this one could have been the broccoli. And so I hope that you have a tune in your head, which is both a fun tune and a tune that supports the values of eating nice and healthy and make it all fun. So this is our final one, and it's called, I think we'll ask this question. Anything you learned from this last session about water? Anybody? Just here's a good little insight or something. It's good for you. Thank you. It took a long time to get that. Your brain shrinks if you don't get enough. Yes, that's true. Yeah, that's right. Anybody else? Yes? Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Mm. Ah, interesting. Mm. That's a good little tidbit to add to this whole thing, because often people think of drinking coffee to stay awake because of the caffeine. Yeah, I see. There you go. So we don't deprive ourselves when we deprive ourselves of coffee. Uh, Thank you for that. Appreciate that. Anyone else? Okay, I'll go on. So yes, we're talking about our overnight repair shop, and you'll find out why in a moment. So we're going to open up our last nugget of gold, talking about the golden formula, and it's called Rest Up on page 30 and 31 of your workbook, if you have it. And I'll just read, say, 3 of the questions out of that. To what degree, very top, to what degree am I getting restorative rest? So it has to be restorative rest. On a scale of 0 to 10, answer these questions based on the last 7 days. So that's kind of like setting our benchmark to which we compare when we do it later on. So I slept 7 to 9 hours each night. Some need 7, some need 9 as an adult. I had consistent sleep schedule. In other words, it's the same time every night when you go to bed. And I turned off technology 60 to 90 minutes bedtime, and it goes on from there. That's because of the blue light that just interferes with our circadian rhythm, etc. And I do have a problem with that one. I don't get my sleep that I need. And so if I'm measuring myself, I'll probably rank myself a little lower on that one. One reason why I probably got 78 and not 100 or something like that. So take a good close look here and see if you can tell a difference. between someone who's got their sleep and someone who's well rested versus someone who's not quite ready for the day. Now, this is part of the test, so you have to look very closely. It's a trick question. All right. So, who is the one who looks well rested? The one on the left or the one on the right? If you said left, you get 10 points. If you said right, we'll put a badge on you for being a comedian. That's what we'll do. I was, and I write the story in the book on one of the last chapters. I was actually driving with my wife and son on the highway going up Vancouver Island. And my wife at the time was a teacher, and she was taking her grade 7-8 class from Port Hardy to Victoria, and we had what they call, I don't know what you call that, education day or something like that. And but it was like a long weekend. And so I was one of the several parents that went with them, and we were coming back, and we were in Nanaimo, and we dropped in, and we had junk food to eat, and then we got back on the road again. And because I had the junk food inside of my body, including sugar, and also because I had spent a late night the night before with the kids, staying up with them, I was assigned to be the last one to go to bed only after the last student was asleep, so I stayed up late. Well, with that combination, after having just eaten, I started to get really sleepy, just coming north of Nanaimo. And so I said to my wife, June, I said, I'm getting sleepy. Do you mind if we switch and you drive? And we've done that before a number of times. And she said, I'm sleepy too. So we agreed that it would be a good idea if she slept for, say, 10 minutes while I was driving, and then she would take over. And then I would sleep with her driving. We thought that was a good idea, but it turned out to be a bad idea. Because within 2 minutes into that 10 minute of her sleeping, I fell asleep at the wheel, going 100 kilometers an hour. And I didn't know, however, that I fell asleep at the wheel until I woke up I'll tell you what happened. The highway is like this, and then there's a ditch about 12 feet down, a slope, and then it goes out into a field, a bumpy field. And behind us, there is a lot of trees, and up ahead, there's a lot of trees, but where I went off the road, it went into a field, thankfully. And so that's where I woke up. I woke up in the field bumping like this, and I saw the highway like up the ditch and over that way. Now, about the time that I woke up, my wife also woke up. And I knew that she woke up because she said, "Ah!" Give or take, something like that. And so I knew she was awake. And so now it was up to me. We're bumping along, probably going now, 70 kilometers an hour, bumping on the field. And I saw the trees way up ahead. So we're going to bash into those, so I had to get back up on the highway. And I didn't want to stop in the field because how are you going to get out of that, right? So I wanted to go up the highway. And so I turned the car to go up the ditch slant. And I thought that's pretty wise of me to do that because I don't have to pay a tow truck to get the car out of the field ditch type. But when I got to the top of the ditch, right where the highway is, the car flipped over. I know, right? It's so inconvenient. And so now the interesting thing, I don't know if have you been in a car accident, anyone? Yeah, so I don't want to bring back any trauma. Sometimes I share the story and people walk out because it's too traumatic. So if you're that way, let me know. I won't tell too much more. But I'm like this on the steering wheel, and I feel myself going up like this. My wife is over here, and the window is behind her, and the window is turning, and so now I can look at my wife, and beyond her I saw the pavement. and so that the car was now sideways. And I turned the wheel. It's kind of interesting, and nothing you do is going to work. It doesn't matter. I mean, the wheels are up in the air now. And so we finally landed on the roof of the car, but that big turnover threw me half out the window. And so my head smashed out the window, and we're going upside down with the wheels in the air. But the seatbelt is keeping my bottom half of my body in the car, and the other half of my body outside the car. And by this, we are slowing down by now. I don't know how slow. And so I was dragging my head along the pavement, and there's a little actually scar still there. And so I didn't want that, so I had to get my head up. But to do that, I had to put my hand down to get my head up. But as soon as I did that, it just shredded my hand and my coat. So I said, oh, and down my head went. And so it's not a fun time if you want to know about it. And I still have a piece of the highway in my hand even today. This was back in the year 2000, 26 years ago. And so here I was sliding down the highway. The four wheels still spinning, but in the air, and the car upside down going down the highway. And I was just waiting for us to bash into something. Like I was waiting for my leg to snap, or my head to bash into another car tire or a meeting or something. But thankfully, we just grinded to a halt. And there's a Mack truck driver behind us, and he saw it all. He told us later he saw it all. And then he took his truck and he straddled both lanes to stop all the traffic. And so then he just came to a stop, and then the ambulance came and the fire truck came, the jaws of life came, and the policemen came too. And so finally they put me on the stretcher with my neck kind of solid in there. But before they did that, I was waiting for a half hour with my head up above the highway about 6 inches, and I couldn't put it down to rest. So I had to make my neck really tight to keep it up. Well, 26 years later, I'm still suffering from that. And I have to get massage. I never got a massage before that, and physio. That was it right now. And so now, when we were upside down, my son's foot was right about where my face was, and I didn't know where my wife was, except I just felt like I was in a dark cave. And so when we finally grinded to a halt, I said, "Everyone okay?" And there was a long time before anyone answered. And my wife says, "Yes, we're okay. I'm okay. Michael?" He goes, "Yes," something like that. He was hanging upside down. The seatbelt was keeping him on the seat, but his head was down, and his foot was over where my head was. And so a man came and helped. By the way, my wife, she bashed herself out of on her side of the car with her feet and crawled on her hands and knees around on broken glass to save her two men. And that's what she called us her two men, her husband and her son. And then she tried her best to help me, but nothing she can do for me. I was stuck, couldn't move. So she was able to, with the help of another man on the highway who came and stopped, was able to get Michael's door open and then kind of alleviate Michael because he couldn't hardly breathe. So he went, like that. So now I was the one who was left to save. And it's interesting, at this time, this is an aside, it's not part of the story. I am getting to to my point. But it's an interesting thing that my wife, June, she thought she'd heard stories about when cars go upside down, they explode because the gas, leaks and stuff like that. So she thought she was going to lose both her men, her husband and her son. And interesting enough, it just makes my heart, bleed with compassion for my wife. She was going to die with us. She'd rather die saving us than to walk away into safety. And so that's what she did. Now, finally, we got to the hospital and got stitched up and stuff. Now, all that drama and trauma and excitement all because I was sleep deprived. So we're talking about the domino effect. So you do one thing that affects the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, accident. And so we could, and I could for sure, point out those steps that led to that car accident. And we were so fortunate that, first of all, I never banged in anyone else and killed them, and nor did I kill my own son or my own wife, which I could have, or myself. And so we were thankful for that. But, you look at the statistics, some are not so fortunate. And it's to do with sleep deprivation. A lot of millions of accidents occur because of sleep deprivation. And many deaths occur as well. And so it's not only responsibility for us and for our health, it's responsibility that we have for other people. So if we're asleep at the wheel, can you imagine? We are driving a weapon, a killing weapon, when we're driving a car. So we need to be alert. And so if we go make those decisions that cause us to not be alert, then we're putting people at risk. So my story is here, get your rest. Now let's talk more about that from the scientific point of view. And so that car, the Ferrari, I just put there to remind me that I want to be a Ferrari, not a jalopy, especially when it comes to sleep and rest and things like that. And so my sleep guru is this man right here. His name is Dr. Matthew Walker. And I first was introduced to him when I was going through a number of TED Talks on YouTube. Have you heard of TED Talks before? TED Talks, TED. They are always professional people who will give a 10-minute, 15-minute talk, and that's it. And so they bring their best. And there's thousands of these TED Talks. It used to be that people would go to the TED Talks and pay like $6,000 just to go to like a TED Talk convention where you have all these speakers. But they only speak for like 15, I think 17, 18 minutes at the very most, so a TED Talk. Well, he did a TED Talk. And here's him quoting, "The best bridge between despair and hope," he says, "is a good night's sleep." There's something about sleep that affects our brain in like 1,000 different ways. And so he liked what he, so I bought his book and I read his book. And so now he is my sleep guru. You can go to the website sleepdiplomat.com if you want to get some more information there. And so he wrote a book called Why We Sleep. And as you can tell, this lady is getting a really good night's sleep. You can tell just by looking at her open eyes. She needs her sleep, and she's not getting any sleep. Well, maybe she turned the lights off. That might help, too. The lights are right on in her face there. So let me just read a few benefits and also some deficits of sleep deprivation. So first of all, the lack of sleep can cause hormonal imbalances. Can you name a few hormones? Just name a few. Estrogen, testosterone, dopamine, that one. And I'm thinking of the word dose, D-O-S-E, and are you getting your dose? The D stands for dopamine, the O stands for oxytocin. Sometimes call that the love hormone or the cuddle hormone. The S stands for serotonin. That could be like the satisfaction hormone, the feel-good hormone. And the E stands for endorphins. So those and many more hormones, like I say, hormones are very bossy forces in your body. They tell other body parts what to do and other molecules what to do. Well, if you don't get a good night's sleep, all that gets out of whack. That's the whole point. So therefore, the hormones, which are supposed to be telling certain body systems what to do, aren't telling them to do the right thing anymore. Why? Because they needed more sleep. They needed more rest. So it also causes weight gain. We'll talk about that in a moment. Slower reaction times. Now, I was on the highway and I fell asleep. Now, it's interesting if you're drunk and you're driving. That's dangerous, and it's even against the law if you're at a certain amount of blood, alcohol in your blood. That's drunk. And the reason why it's dangerous because it slows your reaction time, should maybe a child cross the road or something and you put your foot on the brake and you save the child. Why? Because you have fast reaction time. Well, how much reaction time is there when you're asleep? None. No reaction time. You're not reacting. The car just goes right into the child or to the pole or to the other car. And so slower reaction times, yes, I'll say slower reaction times. When we're asleep, there's no reaction at all. Irritability also happens, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Memory problems, depression, and headaches. So you begin to see a pattern here. With every principle of full power, there's a contribution to this sort of thing. And now we find that sleep also contributes to health. Because we talked about having water contributing to alleviation of some types of headaches. Well, now we find that rest does the same thing. So we have this multitudinous, synergistic effect of all the principles working together to make for a healthy body. And guess who made up that stuff? Our Creator. Like, He's our manufacturer. He knows what we need, what fuel we need to run on. And it's just so fascinating. The science agrees. The science agrees. And that's why when I wrote that book, I was truly, truly excited to find the science that already agreed with what we knew from the scriptures and from the spirit of prophecy and everything. It was just wonderful. So anyway, this reminds me of the blue zones, but this is not the blue zones. This is something else, this map. But read the cost up. This says on the top, economic costs of insufficient sleep across the OECD countries. Do you know what OECD stands for? You would think it stands for like European countries or something. You know what? I have no idea. I used to know, I just forgot. But they're really important countries. I think the C stands for like cooperating, economic cooperating or something like that. But look, you see, well, let's start with Canada. I won't do them all. But Canada has lost, Canadians, $21.4 billion due to or whatever, insufficiency, unproductivity, due to lack of sleep. Sabrina. Did you hear that? Thank you. I kind of forgot just now, so say it again. Organization. Economic cooperation. I thought cooperation was in there. And development. So those countries, thank you, Sabrina. Those countries are represented here, and not all of them, but here's what they are. So you think about it. Now go to the States. The States has lost, whatever year this was, over $400 billion in lost productivity, all because of sleep deprivation. Something which we can rectify with not a whole lot of money. You don't need surgery for that. You don't need to go far away and get anything done. You just sleep and do what you can to get that sleep. So I won't do any more, but just recognize that there are some economic costs to sleep deprivation. And guess what? There was an economic cost to my sleep deprivation. I lost a car. I had to go get a new car after that. So that was an economic cost. So you could say it cost me, whatever thousands of dollars it was to get a new car. So now the benefits. It boosts brain function, so we have better concentration. Just like drinking water, just like eating whole foods, nuts, grains, and vegetables, just like going outside and getting fresh air and getting exercise, this also contributes to better concentration. So you see, we can build it all up. And we don't need to stop at one. We can go on and do some more. Like, how much more better do you want to be, right? So it allows the mind to repair itself. We'll talk about that a little bit. And it develops new neural connections, which helps us to learn new skills. It lowers stress, decreases abnormal levels of cortisol, it's famous for being the stress hormone, and then alertness, productivity and general health, and then it makes you better looking. Well, that's kind of interesting, makes you better looking. What's that actor's name? Jennifer Lopez. Jennifer Lopez. I was reading an article about Jennifer Lopez, where she actually wrote the article, and she says, I always get asked about my beauty routine or something like my beauty regimen. And she says, sleep is the number one beauty trick that I use. That's what she said. And she said, I learned my lesson about overwork, and then, and that's what she said, beauty sleep. And so here's some physical effects of sleep. Helps you actually live longer. Dr. Matthew Walker says, the shorter your sleep, the shorter your life. He actually says that. The shorter your sleep, the shorter your life. It keeps you slim, protects you from cancer, protects you from dementia, wards off cold, flu, and lowers your risk of heart attacks and stroke. Well, if there was a pill for that, how much would you pay? And now you can get it for free. So that's the same thing we've been saying for other things as well. If there is a pill for that, how many billions of dollars would the pharmaceutical industry have if they could create that? They can do that, and sleep can do it. It enhances your memory, enhances and lowers food cravings. Some songs and books have been written while somebody was just waking up from sleep, and the creativity, they go to bed with a problem on their mind. I think Einstein would have done this. And then they wake up with an answer because there's something happening in the brain while you're sleeping that helps with the creativity. Now, here is an overly simplistic view of the brain. I'd like you to note some of the parts of the brain. The red part is the front, where the forehead would be. It's called cortex. And in the front is the prefrontal cortex. The thalamus, and now the amygdala is what I want you to note, the amygdala. I find the amygdala to be the most interesting part of the brain because the amygdala is that part of the brain that puts you into this fight or flight syndrome. But there's more to it than just simply that. Let me talk about it. Now, I know I don't expect you to be able to see all this, but I will blow it up just a bit. But I would like to note the title here, The Neural Consequences of Sleep Deprivation on Food Desirability. The neural consequences. So neural means brain, right? The neurons in the brain. So what it's going to show, I'll just do that right here. It's going to show that different parts of the brain, the anterior cingulate, the orbital frontal, the anterior insula, the amygdala, and the ventral striatum. I can't say a lot about these things and all the details of what they do, but all I want you to know right now is these are different parts of the brain. And do note the very far right, the two little boxes there says rested and deprived of sleep. So the gray, and that's like the code to interpret this graph. The gray bars, the columns that go up, are the state of the brain when it's rested. And then when it's sleep deprived, how active is that same part of the brain? For example, the very first one, the anterior cingulate, the very first column. You see, when that part of the brain is rested, it's active, and that's a good thing. And when that part of the brain is deprived of sleep, you see that the activity of the anterior cingulate goes down, so is no longer active anymore. And they can measure all this out. So here's what I want you to know. Do you notice any exception? That's the part I want you to know. Do you see an exception here? Yeah, what part of the brain is that? The amygdala. So notice that when the amygdala is at rest, you see the gray comes down below. It's not down below for anything else, but it is for the amygdala. Why? Because the amygdala is the thing that makes you all alert. It makes you agitated. It makes you ready to fight off the tiger and to jump away from the snake. And it makes you alert. And so when it's at rest, fine, you don't need to be alert. Now, look at how high the red bar is. When the body is sleep deprived, look how active the amygdala is. So, what does that really mean? Let me just read what I have circled here. Sleep deprivation resulted in a significant increase in amygdala reactivity to food desirability and to 100 other things, but we'll talk about food. So you say, why is it that when you don't get a good night's sleep, you gain weight? This is why. Because when we don't get a good enough sleep, the amygdala is activated when it shouldn't be. It's activated. That means we wake up the next day and we're all alert. We're alert. We're more agitated. We're more likely to snap at a friend or our spouse or our children or our parents. The amygdala is just on alert for fight or flight, like it's a chronic fight or flight thing. So it's like a stress response. Now, you don't want to have that when you're supposed to just be having a good time with a friend. You don't want to be having that. But the interesting thing is, now let's talk about food. We talked about food and willpower before, and habits and things like that under omit what is harmful. And we talked about that. Now, when the amygdala is activated, that corresponds to a deactivation of the frontal cortex. So not completely shut down, but there's less communication going back, like electrical impulses going from the amygdala to the prefrontal cortex. So the prefrontal cortex is that part of the brain that we use to make decisions, to plan ahead, to use our rationality, to use our indoor voice when we're talking to somebody else. And so, but when the amygdala is overactivated, then we are less likely to be considerate, we are less likely to be kind, and we're more likely to have to give in to impulse, whether it's emotional, relational types of impulses, like someone insults you and you get angry, or food. And so if the amygdala is as activated, then we see food that we like is not good for us, but we like it, we are more likely to eat it. Because the prefrontal cortex is not there to say, stop what you're doing, think this through. See, that message is kind of going down. Meanwhile, the message, I want this and I want this now, that goes up. Why? Because the amygdala is activated. Isn't this insight so fascinating to learn about? And so not only do we gain weight because of that, we also lose relationships because of that as well. Because there's something called the prefrontal cortex, and it's so much more complicated, but I'm trying to make it easy for myself too. The prefrontal cortex is what regulates our emotions. Regulates. You're walking down the street, you see grandma pushing a baby cart. The baby has a little ice cream in his hand, and you want that ice cream. You love ice cream, and you want that. You feel like taking that ice cream away from the baby. Why don't you? Because apart from that, I'm not going to repeat what she said. As you heard it. Do you want to say it, ma'am? Yes, let's say there's nasal discharge. So now, aside from that, you want that ice cream. Now, the reason why you don't take it is because you're an adult. You happen to know that as an adult, you just don't do stuff like that. You are that's called self-regulation. When your amygdala is activated, that self-regulation goes down. And that affects so many things. And so we end up actually eating, on average, between 250 and 350 more calories the next day. Now imagine if you're regularly getting not enough sleep. Just keep on putting on weight because we're eating more calories. Why? Because we don't have the willpower. We're not self-regulating because our amygdala is activated. So I thought that was pretty cool. I had to share that with you. It's so neat. So let's go on from there. Now, the emotional effect of sleep relating to the amygdala, if it's at rest, contributes to happiness. It reduces depression and anxiety. It makes us calm. That fight or flight response is now diminished. And the amygdala is 60% more active when we're sleep deprived. So 60%, that's the term the amount that they put in there. So there are 4 pillars to sleep, and so when you think about your sleep quality, there are 4 things to consider. Number 1, the depth and quality of your sleep to do with REM and non-REM. So what does REM mean? R-E-M. Yeah, rapid eye movement. So your eyelids are closed and you can still see your eyes going back and forth. So during that time is usually the time we're dreaming, where we feel like we're actively dreaming, doing something, but a lot of our muscles are shut down, so we actually can't do it. But we're thinking of doing it. Now, that's lighter sleep. And then we actually do more later. And let's say you sleep for 8 hours. There's a sleep cycle. And we go through about maybe 4 sleep cycles where REM sleep, deep sleep, REM sleep, deep sleep, and goes back and forth, back and forth. And the closer you get to the morning, let's say you wake up at 6 in the morning or something, the cycle is shorter and shorter. And the REM sleep is higher and higher into alertness level, so that's why we remember the dreams that we most recently had when we wake up in the morning. And so some of those dreams are actually creative solutions to things, which is kind of cool. I have often woken up after a good night's sleep, and I just can't wait to get to the office and start writing down my ideas. It's so neat. It's so neat. This is me and God working together. And then I come back and I tell my wife all about all the good stuff I just figured out. And so it's kind of, she says, oh, that's a good one there. So anyway, that's one pillar of sleep. Next one is duration. For adults, at least, children need more, but adults need between 7 and 9 hours of sleep. So it may be 7, it may be 8, maybe 9. So that's duration. The next one is continuity. In other words, it's not broken up, it's not fragmented. So the more fragmented your sleep, the less the quality of sleep, and the more the amygdala gets activated. So we have to work on that. And regularity. Same time you go to bed, the same time every night. That's a hard one for me, but it's the required, if you want to have life on full power, go to bed the same time every single night, whether it be 10 o'clock or 10:30 or 9:30, whatever it is. Some people say 11 or 12, something like that. The earlier the better. If we can get up with the sun, that's all the better. So those are the 3, and the 4 different items to remember. Now, what can you do? What can you do to improve your night's sleep? Well, recognize that you need complete darkness when you go to bed. Complete darkness. Children who are afraid of the night, sometimes it's hard for them, but I don't know what to say about them. But for us adults, certainly, we need to be dark. Our eyes cannot be exposed to any light whatsoever. Now, if you have to get up in the middle of the night, try to have lights that are low on the floor, not up in the ceiling. And that way your eyes won't be as disturbed when you get up in the middle of the night. Sometimes even red lights. So, or sometimes if I don't often get up in the middle of the night, but if I do, I'll try and feel my way around. I don't want to turn the lights on and kind of wake me up, Temperature. Keep the temperature of your room between 17 to 19 degrees Celsius. A little cooler than room temperature in the scientific lab is often 21 degrees Celsius, so just a few degrees colder than that. Don't stay in bed when you're awake, especially for more than 20 minutes. Go to another room and read a non-exciting book. Don't look at a TV screen or a computer screen, and then don't train your brain into thinking that the bed is a place to stay awake in. So if you're awake for more than 20 minutes, this is what the recommendation is. And again, I'm referring to not only Dr. Matthew Walker, but others as well who agree. Caffeine. Caffeine cuts down on the deep sleep by 20%. If you have your last cup of coffee at midday. And so caffeine is, of course, it actually, what it does when it keeps us awake at night, what happens is, I can't remember all of it, but the molecules have something called adenosine receptors, and so the more of those adenosine receptors that are filled with the adenosine, the sleepier we are. What caffeine does, it comes in and it uses up those adenosine receptors, so the adenosine can't get on there, and so you have all those caffeine molecules up there, so you're going to stay awake. But as soon as you stop the caffeine, or as soon as the caffeine kind of dissipates through your body gradually, then the adenosine starts taking the place of where it should be very, very quickly. Like they're just standing by, waiting to jump into that receptor in the brain. And so when we have coffee, that's what keeps us awake. It's the replacement of the adenosine with caffeine in the brain, which is not really good because it keeps us awake and it acts on our nervous system. Now, Dr. Matthew Walker, just listen to him in any interview on YouTube, and he'll talk about coffee and alcohol, about how it's not really helpful for us going to sleep. And I believe he said the half-life of caffeine is 12 hours. Now, what does half-life mean? It means that's how long it takes to kind of dissipate throughout the system where it's no longer affecting you anymore. 12 hours. Well, when do you go to bed? Well, what's 12 hours before that? So you go to bed at, say, 10. 12 hours before that is 10 in the morning. So he would say that's when you drink your last cup of coffee. But if you get a shower and you have a nice cold shower afterwards, you may not need the first cup of coffee. And so maybe you only need one cup. And if you're going for a walk and an exercise, you don't have time to have that cup. So you may as well just forget about it altogether. So alcohol is interesting because some people drink alcohol to go to sleep. Just note this, and this is again from Matthew Walker. Alcohol is, we go to sleep, but it's not really sleep that we're in. It's sedation. And being sedated and sleep are two different things. And one of the major characteristics of the difference between those two is that when you're sedated, you don't go into the deep sleep. You mean we have that cycle of sleep, right? Light, deep type of thing, and REM and non-REM. Well, when you're sedated, you don't do it. Actually missing a part of the cycle of sleep when we're drunk and we go to bed kind of sedated with alcohol. And so that creates fragmented sleep. And the thing is, a lot of people who do that, they wake up thinking they had a good night's sleep. But when they're actually measured, it was a fragmented sleep. Objective measurement would show that. So keep that in mind as well for those of you who have trouble with your alcohol. And screen time, blue light. Perhaps this is my nemesis right here. The light that comes from your phone, from your iPad, from your laptop, and from your television. And you probably know this, it just keeps you awake. So that's why the recommendation is, and I've seen it 30 minutes before you go to bed, shut it all off. Someone else will say, no, the studies show 60 minutes. And some other studies say, no, 90 minutes. So that's why I wrote down 30 to 90 minutes, depending on what last study that you just read about it. But either way, the blue light keeps us up. And so if we want to get a good night's sleep, especially if we're going to work in the morning, got to get up and going, it's not going to help to be watching something on a screen before we go to bed. So some thoughts there. Any thoughts on that? Any comments? Have you experienced this before? I mean, I know that I have. If I'm on my either laptop or my iPhone, just before I go to bed, I just can't get to sleep, so I may as well do some more work on my laptop then. Well, that keeps me awake even longer, and all that kind of stuff. So You get into a death spiral after that. So sleep develops new neural connections, and that basically translates into we learn things. We remember things when there's more connections in the brain. Sometimes they call that intelligence. So it relates to intelligence. And so it helps us to learn new skills when we go to sleep. And so they've done studies where the students will learn something, and then they'll be tested on it. The other group of students will learn the same thing and won't be tested on it until the next day after they slept. And those who've had higher grades than those who got tested right away because of the neural connections that are being made when we're sleeping. Hence, the overnight repair shop when we're sleeping. The overnight, and there's more to it, and we'll get into that right now. Now think of this particular item that you might see in your bathroom or your kitchen. What's it called? What does it look like to you? Okay, it is. It's a sponge. Think of your brain as a sponge. Now you wake up in the morning, and your brain is ready to take in information, data, from the 5 senses and from experiences, and it takes in like millions and millions of bits of data. But it's not just ethereal or immaterial. Every time the brain takes in data, it actually builds up something of substance in neurons in the brain. It's just fascinating. We're fearfully and wonderfully made. And so it's like a sponge. And so, but as you get going throughout the day, the sponge gets full and full. Just like water and on a sponge. And after a while, it can't take any more. It can't take any more. The sponge is what do you call that? Soaked, saturated. That's the word, saturated. Same as your brain. Same as your brain. Now, it's different for different people, of course. So when you go to sleep, what happens in the brain is that it starts transferring, and I don't know if it's a glucose, I forget now, if it's glucose or something, from like say, the limbic system or from the hypothalamus. What's the part of the brain that takes care of short-term memory? Anyone know? I think it's the thalamus, I think. Short-term memory, this is the short-term memory part of the brain. But in the nighttime, that gets transferred to the long-term memory, which is more in the cerebral cortex area. And so they've actually studied brains while they were asleep, and they could slow down the activity of the electrical impulses in the brain, and they could actually see it moving, like like that. Millions and millions. It goes back. What? Yeah, just like a file transfer. As a matter of fact, he actually used that computer analogy. So the transfer of information is going from short-term to long-term. And that's why we can learn, and that's why we remember things. But hey, if we've had coffee or alcohol, we don't have that as much. That file transfer is not as efficient. Of course, it ain't going to happen. So that's something to really keep in mind when it comes to sleep. So it's like a sponge. So when that file transfer happens throughout the night, the brain is ready the next morning with a brand new dry sponge, ready to take in more data, more information, and it gets filled up, and then on it goes from there. So I think that's pretty cool. What do you think? We are fearfully and wonderfully made. Our brains are just an amazing piece of creation, really. So here's a little bit of a depiction on that. Not only that, but information gets filed into particular categories. The most important category is whether it's emotional or informational. And that's, of course, a big deal. And trauma-informed counselors are very aware of the trauma being stored in the brain. And there are things that they can do to help that. And sometimes it works. Many times it works, sometimes it doesn't. So here are a few amazing facts. Now, have you ever heard of amyloid beta, sometimes called beta amyloid? Raise your hands if you have. So not too many. This is a really good thing to know. They've discovered that patients, after they're dead, if they've had Alzheimer's, they have a lot of this amyloid beta stuck in their brain. It's like sticky protein. And it's waste. it's toxic. And that gets cleared when we have a good night's sleep. But if we don't have a good night's sleep, that doesn't get cleared out, and it's stuck there. And the more it's stuck there, the more it hinders the brain from doing its memory work. Hence, Alzheimer's. If you keep on intensifying that year after year. Alzheimer's disease is now associated with a lot of this amyloid beta still stuck in the brain and not being cleared out. So immune cells weaken when we don't get enough sleep. 6 hours of sleep on a regular basis makes us 4 times more likely to catch the flu. Poor sleep decreases testosterone. It's interesting with testosterone. Just go to YouTube and look up TED Talks Matthew Walker. And then up comes Matthew Walker on a stage, and he says, I want to talk to you today about testicles. That's how he begins. That's his opening line. So you got to listen from then on, right? And he basically says, men, he didn't talk about women, but just the men, who don't get enough sleep, and he listed how much it was and how much it wasn't, says they have actually smaller testicles when they don't have enough sleep for a certain period of time. And I don't know how long that was, but funny. So it decreases testosterone when we don't get enough sleep. And so some men, I'm thinking of one right now on TV, a famous guy, is proud of himself that he doesn't need sleep. He'll sleep when he's dead, that kind of thing. And he thinks he's a big man. Well, he better test out his testicles just to see if he really is or not. That's what I'd say to him. Anyway, according to Matthew Walker. Poor sleep, this is where it says you get 250 more calories per meal, and it could even be more with poor sleep. The next day you eat more food. If you pull an all-nighter, it decreases your activity and your thinking capacity by 40%. Long-term memory, the hippocampus is what I was trying to remember, the hippocampus. Cortex, so that's where the transfer, short-term to long-term, hippocampus to the cortex. It also increases loneliness, believe it or not. Because if our brains aren't working and our amygdalas are activated and we're interacting with people, we're not interacting as well. And other people pick up on something, and there's a distancing there, and we feel more lonely because of that. And I remember something happened to me. It was at camp meeting, and there's this lady, and every time I meet the lady, she's such a friendly, kind lady to talk to. We always have an animated conversation, and we say goodbye, we'll see you next year, whatever. Well, this time I didn't have any sleep the night before. I slept 1 hour. I went to bed at, 4 o'clock in the morning. And I woke up at 5 in the morning because I had an early morning meeting in the main pavilion. And so that's why you can see, when we're at camp meeting, Pastor Ron, we're working hard and long. And so I worked 23 hours that day. And so I woke up with very little sleep. Now I meet this lady the next morning. And I try to have one of those friendly kind of conversations that I had before. Nothing. And she walks away, and I'm thinking, oh, I just messed up. I wished I could just talk with her like normal. But my brain just wasn't working. And so I felt like I didn't lose a friend, but I felt more isolated. You know what I mean? And so why? Because I didn't get enough sleep. And so it has an effect on your relationships as well. So loneliness, that's why we put that there. Artificial light, of course, we know about that, I think. So here's your brain workers working on your brain at nighttime, making sure it's all working. It's the overnight repair shop. When we're asleep, we're really, really, really busy. We're really busy. And so we get things done at nighttime. But it's nice that we can just lie there and let your brain do all the work. Isn't that nice? And it's a lot of work being done. So they did a study at the University of Chicago. And they experimented with healthy people. And they limited them to a certain number of hours of sleep, even when lying down for 8 hours. They limited their sleep. After 1 week of short sleep, their blood sugar levels were disrupted so much that the doctor would classify them as a pre-diabetic. 1 hour of sleep deprivation, not 1 hour, but 1 week worth of 7 days of sleep deprivation messed up their blood sugar so that they would be called pre-diabetic. Can you see how important sleep is? And so now they judged the pre-diabetes by a glucose tolerance test after a fast, which measures how good the body of the glucose. And so I won't read that. I think we've gone through a lot of it already, but here she is. I actually use a mask many times to make sure it's dark enough in my room. My wife doesn't wear a mask, but I do. Because, you know, the light street lamp out there, and it comes a little in your bedroom window or something. So I actually wear a mask. But you can tell the light's right on her. She needs a mask because the lights aren't off on her at all. And so she needs a mask. So how are you doing? How are you doing on your sleep? You can go to the workbook and go to page 30-something, and you can answer those questions there, and you can see how you're doing. So I'm now going to, what time is it? Is it time to go? It's 7:30, right? Give or take, so it's time to go. So this is your test. Are you ready for your test? I told you there was a test. There's an exam coming. Did Christina tell you that, did she warn you that there was a test? You didn't tell? It was me, okay. Right, it was me. Well, number one, what does the F stand for? Can you hear her? That's right. Okay, you're right. You get a point for that. Get a point for that. Now, you're all going to be one team. I could have you kind of competing, but I don't want to do that. So what does the U stand for? Yes, I think that's what it is. Oh, sure enough. I put positive there, but it should say healthy spirituality. What is the L? Yeah, lovify your life. Look at that. Lovify your life. We didn't talk about the second L as much. We alluded to it all the time, but didn't really come out and say it. Launch your plan. And so the question for you is, when are you going to launch your plan? So some of you have the book. Some of you have the workbook. Some of you have notes. Some of you have even memories of things that you heard here today and this week. It's up to you, but have any of you chosen something to do about this? I don't want to make you feel guilty because your life, right? You do what you want to do. But if I could encourage you, pick something to do, but also pick the day you're going to start. And then pick the time of the day you're going to do it. Is that in the morning? Pick what your morning routines are and what you're going to change about them. Or your evening routines and what you're going to change about them. So yeah, launch your plan is the next one. So we won't talk more about that. What does the P stand for? Yeah, prioritize high-octane fuel. And sometimes, if I'm in certain circles, I would say, plantify your plate there. But I say that because people get afraid they have to give up their steaks or something. But step by step. So here we are. Now, I put food here, but food is the fuel, and fuel is the food. So what is the O? Yeah, omit what is harmful, sometimes called temperance, sometimes in the old-fashioned words called abstemiousness there. So we'll put omit what is harmful. And basically, we're talking about sugar, salt, fat, alcohol, and smoking, mainly those things that just affect ourselves in a negative way. And then what is the W? Yes, water, like water up. I put the word up in there because I want to make sure that the word water is a verb, because everything is a verb. It's an action. It's an action at the level of root causes, and that's what I wanted to do with Full Power. So, New Start, Dean Earnest, the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, even the North American Division Health Committee, they have their own acronym. All these acronyms are all over the place. Well, this is probably the best acronym. And the reason why is because everyone is a verb, and everyone is at a root cause, and everyone is divinely ordained and also scientifically supported. And so also the words themselves, full power, depicts what we're always, we want to look for because we need to feel empowered. So water up is a verb. It's a verb, so water yourself up. And what's the E? Yeah, and exercise where? Outdoors. And if you can't do it outdoors, then what? Yeah, open the windows and bring the outdoors inside so we get that fresh air all the time. All right, so exercise outdoors. We get 3 doctors in one. And then we get the R, and what does that stand for? So, yeah, rest. And I'll just say rest up. I don't have the word up there. And so now we have this young lady who is living out her life of full power. That's the golden formula, as opposed to the silver bullet. Silver bullet is that one thing you think is going to do everything for you. Well, it's not. We need a formula that synergistically works all together. And so we've talked about all the things belonging to that formula. And when you put it all together, what do you get? A life of full power. And there you go. So I'm going to end it right there. Any thoughts, doubts, hesitations, confusions, or questions? Yes? Mm-hmm. Yeah. This comes up a lot, actually. And part of the answer is probably obvious when you're all, yeah, go ahead. You have an answer for her? Oh. Oh, no one can hear the question. Yes, okay. I need to repeat what she said. Oh, thank you for that. Yeah, thank you, Jason. So she's saying that since menopause, I don't get a good enough sleep, and now you can test me to see if I heard you right. But the bigger issue is that I try to drink my water, but then I have to get up in the middle of the night. Is that pretty well it? What do we do? So what do we do on that one? There's several protocols, of course, we can do, and the obvious one is drink your water earlier in the day. That would be one thing. And so often people do that, and they still got to go. If you're doing all you can in the full power principles, you're doing everything you can naturally, then see a doctor and let the doctor tell you there may be something else that you could pay attention to pretty well. Because when we'll get you. Let me just give me a moment, and I'll get back to you. If we have something wrong with us, it's sort of like, think of an onion. That's the core thing that's wrong with us. But then if we add to that bad habits, it's like another layer of the onion, so that when the doctor finally sees you, he's got to go through all those layers to get out to the real cause of the problem. So if we just remove those layers and do the FULLPOWER, so that when you actually come to him, he can't say, you'll drink more water, eat better. And he won't say all that stuff. He says, here is the medical problem that I see, unhindered by our bad habits. Now, often we know it's our bad habits that cause a lot of the stuff. But not always, not always. We can help it for some of the diseases that we get. But the chronic diseases, most of them, we can help. So that's kind of my first response. Sorry, it's not more but I think Christina has something to say about it. Mm. Mm. Good point. I'll repeat that too. Okay. A very good point. Best to drink your water and sip it throughout the day than to guzzle all at one time. Now, that's actually a question on the 10-question habit tracker for drinking your water. When you drink your water, do you kind of space it out throughout the day? And the big point I think you're making is, and when you guzzle a lot of it down at once, it goes right straight to the kidneys, and of course, you've got to use the bathroom more by doing that, as opposed to being disseminated out to all the cells of your body. So thank you very much for that good point. Yeah, I appreciate that. Dr. Gill, do you have anything to add on this at all? Sorry to put you on the spot. Mm-hmm. Mm. And Jason wants me to repeat everything you said, which I want to do. What's that? Cystocele. So I think if I'm catching you correctly, being a gynecologist who knows about things regarding this, it may have to do with an anatomical situation in the bladder and whatever have you, which can be often corrected or treated in some way or another, which really gets back to, in a sense, we want to help the doctor by clearing away as many confounds as we can. So if we're doing the FULLPOWER, if we're doing all that as best we can, then the doctor can see more clearly what the real problem is. So I think that's so cool. Don't you think so? And don't you think that would work that way? So if everybody just came to you and they already doing good habits, and you really know a little bit more better what to zoom in on to figure out what the problem is. Yeah. Anybody else? Well, yes? Yes. I'll tell you first of all what I used to do and then what I now hope to do. I used to just eat fast food. It's so convenient and very tasty, and you have an excellent excuse to have a lot of good tasting junk food. And I used to do that. Now, if it really depends on how serious and how committed you are to the health of your body. Now, some people just prepare stuff ahead of time and they take it with them. Often, what I do now, especially like my wife will say, okay, you're going on a trip, what are you going to take? I almost always take 2 bananas. I'll go to our fridge and get some Silver Hills bread, and I'll get a few slices of Silver Hills bread, easy to eat. I don't usually take oranges because they get messy on my fingers, and I don't, I'm out driving or whatever. And I'll always take some nuts, some almonds, some walnuts, and some cashews or something. And so now I have some fruit. I'll take an apple. So I have a banana, an apple, slice of like whole wheat, like multigrain bread, and I've got some nuts. So now I've got a very plain meal, very plain meal. I could add a little bit to that, and that's what I would do. I would even eat that in a car, not at the same time as driving, but I'd have that on the airplane or something like that, which I've done a lot. I'll eat a good meal on the airplane where everybody else is having their sugar, salt, and fat. I'm having my nuts, my banana, and my apple and stuff like that. So one thing, I guess, is to prepare ahead of time. Then, if you're going to restaurants, often we know that restaurants have tasty food because of the high sugar, salt, and fat. But you can ask, of course, for them to, can I have this without cheese, please? Or can you have a vegan, version of this or something? So at least you're minimizing as best you can. Some restaurants, many restaurants will do that. And so it's not the best, but hey, it's not the worst either. That's another thing as well. Something else, anybody else? Because we can always contribute to each other. Timing, of course. When do we actually leave the house? And how many hours from now are we going to be eating? And so we try to make, okay, we can drive for 4 hours and stop, whatever, and so we actually plan ahead of time. So a lot of it, if you read the book Bright Line Eating by Susan Pierce Thompson, who is a neuropsychologist lady on food addictions and weight loss, and she has taught on the psychology of eating. She'll say the big secret is planning ahead. That's what she'll say. Because when you're planning ahead, you're using your prefrontal cortex. You're not hungry, so you're not tempted now, so you're going to plan well. But when you get hungry, because of the decision you already made, for those of you who know the Bible, Daniel 1:7 says Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the king's delicacy. So he actually had a pre-decision already made, so when that temptation came, it wasn't a temptation. He just rolled on by. And so having a pre-plan ahead of time of what you're going to do, you anticipate what's going to happen in the day, and you plan for that as best you can. So I don't know, does that help at all? Yes? plan to fail or fail to plan. She may use that, but that phrase has been around for 50 years. If you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. So that's a good point. So planning ahead of time as well. So anticipate what your needs will be, time it out, plan for it and stuff like that. But that's what I do with regards to, like, I'll get all that into a bag. Sometimes we have a Silver Hills loaf of bread and it's like half gone. I'll just take the whole half of bread, half a loaf, and put my apple and banana and nuts in there, and I just grab and go. That's what I do. And so 4 hours later, 5, I'm going to eat that as we go along. Anyone else? Yes, please. For some it is, and for some it isn't. I actually can, and it's no problem. People don't seem to have the capacity to drink water before to go to bed without having to get up in the middle of the night. And so the answer would be, here you can do an experiment to find out. Take a glass of water, do nothing else, and wait to see when you need to use the bathroom. For some people, it's a half hour later. For some people, it isn't. Depends what else is in your body, in your stomach, etc. But if you know that when you drink so much water, that's going to take you 1 hour before that comes out of your body, then drink before that, before you go to bed. For some people, they can contain the water in their bladder all night because, number one, it's not very much. Number two, they can contain it, and they wake up and use the bathroom right away. So I guess you have to do an experiment on that. But the answer is, yes, it's possible, but not for everybody. Anybody else want to comment on that? Yeah. Yes, please. Yeah. The science agrees with that. The best time to have your water to start with, I wouldn't say only, is as soon as you wake up. As soon as you wake up, that'd be one of the first things you do in your morning routine. You use the bathroom, open up your eyes to the sunlight, and read something inspiring, and those kind of things. So think of your morning routine. Maybe there's about 6 things or 7 things you do in the morning, and that would definitely be one of those things. Yeah. And our morning routines, in a sense, helps us to sharpen the axe to be able to cut the firewood in the daytime. It's better to do it with a sharp axe, and then we're ready to go. And those morning routines help us with that. Anybody else before we close? Well, hey, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to be with you all. I think I've made some new friends. I really appreciate this. And I'm going to turn it over now to Christina. So may God bless you, and just thank you so much for all your friendship and all your kindness. God bless.
Incredible series, and before I thank Earn, I just want to express gratitude to the Williams Lake SDA Health Committee for putting this all together and for including me from Caribou to also be a part of this event as well. And I just wanted to let you all know what's coming next. So there is a plan to look into putting together a depression recovery program this spring to start in April, and there will be more information coming soon. And if you are interested, you can also indicate that on the feedback form that you were given to complete if you'd like to receive information or be contacted about that. And so the other thing is, of course, just gratitude to Earn for coming all this way and for presenting just a stellar series, and just so helpful. And we just have a little token of appreciation for you. Very little. And I'd like to invite Pastor Ron up to say a few words and to close out in prayer.
Well, that's a nice title. Healing by His Design. Natural Remedies and Scriptures for the Body and Soul. This is really good. Thank you so much.
Something that the Health Committee put together here. So.
Really?
I just want to say thank you personally. I really say that, what am I just want to say thank you personally. I think the people that know me know that I have not always been the most tempered person, and you have certainly inspired me. So may Sandra help me, and I'm sure that all of us together will be a little more balanced in
One
our
step at a
approach to
time.
life. It was excellent. I really appreciate it. I read the book before I came in April and spent some time with you guys. Read the book, was motivated by it. I want to thank the health community too. I want to thank each of you for coming.
Yes.
I'd like for us just to stand as we pray together and ask God's blessing as you travel and as you return, continue in the work. Let's just bow our heads. Father in heaven, I want to say thank you for the fellowship of your Spirit that we have experienced this week and in this seminar. I want to thank you for Ern. Thank you for his passion. Thank you for the information that he shared. Thank you for your Spirit's blessing that brought unity to our district in terms of this outreach. And I pray that you will help us to take these principles, Father, and to live them in a more intentional manner. And I pray that you'll be honored as we go forward. Continue to bless Earnest. He works on his second book. As he continues to develop his ministry, go before him. It is so essential and so necessary and such a blessing for this time. I pray that the doors of the church and beyond the church will open for this message. And I pray that you'll be honored as he goes forward. Give him traveling mercies and continue to bless us as we continue to develop programs to be encouraged in our walk with you. And for your Spirit's blessing, we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, my friend.
Very good.